KFC's 9 locations, including the Amazonia Mall at Providence, open now from 9 a.m. to 10:30 p.m. KFC.
It's finger licking good.
And now the news in detail. The 7-member Guyana Elections Commission GECOM today appeared split down the middle over whether former Deputy Chief Elections Officer Vishnu Prasad should be appointed as Chief Elections Officer. Pro-People's Progressive Party PPP Elections Commissioner Bibi Shadiq is quite confident that Mr. Prasad can be appointed possibly by the end of the week as the new administrative head of the commission. She says he is the only applicant who is experienced and qualified in the area of elections management. Ms. Shadiq says there is urgent need for a new CEO because of a backlog of administrative decisions that have to be made. However, a Partnership for National Unity plus Alliance for Change APNU AFC Allied Elections Commissioner Vincent Alexander charges that Mr. Prasad's tenure as Public Relations Officer cannot be considered senior management based on the elections management body's own organogram. He says the PRO position is on scale 8 and the person is not required to manage elections. Mr. Alexander also argues that Mr. Prasad's 3-year stint as Deputy Chief Elections Officer cannot add up to 10 years' experience. While Mr. Prasad had been Public Relations Officer, he had worked in civic and voter education, but Mr. Alexander countered that it had not been long enough to add up to 10 years. The non-governmental civil society organization Article 13 fears that hefty fines and long jail terms will discourage persons from taking up certain jobs at the Guyana Elections Commission GECOM. Article 13 made known its position about the government's proposed amendments to the Representation of the People Act. One of them includes a $10 million fine and life imprisonment for the chief elections officer if he commits certain elections offenses. But the recently formed civil society organization fears that if these proposals make their way into law, they can have a chilling effect on the willingness of citizens to serve for a paltry sum as clerks on election day. Already leader of the Alliance for Change, attorney-at-law Kemraj Ramchadan, has said that persons could be scared away from taking up the jobs, leaving GECOM to hire persons of a lower caliber. Fugitive Diamantaire Mehul Chokshi of India fears that he may be kidnapped again and this time may be taken to Guyana. Earlier this year, he was snatched from Antigua, placed in a boat, and taken to Dominica. Being a citizen of Antigua, he fought a legal battle and was eventually allowed to leave Dominica to get medical attention in Antigua. Now he fears that he'll be kidnapped and brought to Guyana.
But yet I feel very unsafe as I've been hearing there is another attempt being made to kidnap me now from Antigua to Guyana, as there is a greater presence of Indians there. They're trying once again in illegal manner to kidnap me of where I'm citizen in Antigua, to take me to another Caribbean country and again to press me away from there to India.
Chokshi is wanted in India in connection with a multi-million-dollar fraud at the Punjab National Bank. People's National Congress Reform Executive Member Christopher Jones says the appointment of a new leader and executive of his party will mark the start of campaigning for the next general and regional elections. He was speaking at an outreach meeting in Linden for Aubrey Norton, who is one of 3 candidates vying for the post of leader. Mr. Jones is campaigning for the position of vice chairman of the PNCR.
Comrades, these elections for the PNC is essentially the start of the party's election campaign. And every person elected at this Congress is essentially setting that strategic group of individuals who will hit the ground running to get the work done that is necessary.
Mr. Jones says he'll work exclusively with whoever is elected the next leader of the PNCR to revive his party's youth arm, the Guyana Youth and Student Movement.
And my intention, once elected as vice chairman, is to work with that committee, of which they will point us to every part in every region for us to form GYSN groups. I can make a commitment to you here tonight and the next leader of the party and the leadership of the party that once elected vice chairman, within the first 6 months of 2022, the Guyana Youth and Student Movement will host its biannual Delegates Congress, of which you will have members from all parts of this country.
He says this will be crucial for the PNCR to capitalize on the large number of youths. Health Minister Dr. Frank Anthony says 3 complicated surgeries have been performed in Guyana. He says these included the removal of the cancerous part of a liver, the removal of an adrenal gland, and the prevention of a rupture of the aortic artery in the heart.
These are all very complicated surgeries, and it's the first time in some instances that we're doing these types of surgeries. So I want to, on behalf of the ministry, extend our congratulations to all the surgeons, the anesthesiologists, the support staff who would have assisted in these very complicated operations, and we look forward to them doing these types of operations more on a routine basis as we see these types of patients. But it just demonstrates that our doctors here, they have the capacity to do very complicated surgeries and be successful.
Health Minister Dr. Frank Anthony. Guyana will be constructing a hospitality institute to train countrymen for the large number of internationally branded hotels that are being constructed here. Minister of Tourism Onij Walren says the institute will be built at Ogle, East Coast Amarara. She explains that this area has been chosen because the Hospitality Institute will be close to the several foreign branded hotels that will be built at Ogle. Several companies have purchased former sugarcane lands to build a number of hotels. The Guyana government's Department of Public Information has quoted a tourism minister saying that the sod has been turned for several branded hotels expected to be completed by 2023 to 2024, which will see an additional 1,000 to 1,200 rooms. Turning now to news from the Caribbean. Friends and supporters of Cuba in St. Lucia friends and supporters of Cuba in St. Lucia are calling the St. Lucia government to move quickly to ensure St. Lucia gets early delivery of Cuba's approved COVID-19 vaccines. The call was made during a special event to mark the 42nd anniversary of the St. Lucia Cuba Humanistic Solidarity Association. The event was attended by the new Cuban ambassador to St. Lucia, Bernardo Toscano Sardinas. The call for accessing the Cuban vaccines came by way of a resolution from the floor calling on the government to initiate steps to secure the Cuban vaccines, which have been accredited by the World Health Organization. Abdala, the most popular of Cuba's 5 vaccines, is ready to hit the market, and Havana is now reportedly ready to share the vaccine with the world, starting with its Latin American and the Caribbean neighbors. Cuba's President Miguel Diaz-Canel has assured Prime Minister Philip Pierre and other leaders of the Conference of Latin American and the Caribbean States at the recent Mexico summit in September that after substantive clinical trials at home, Havana was about to share the vaccines. Cuba's vaccines have been tailored for children and include a nasal spray for those fearful of needles. A restructuring of the Department of Culture has seen a new focus being placed on cultural education in the British Virgin Islands. The Culture Minister, Dr. Natalia Wheatley, said the Cultural Education Unit in the department has been playing a massive role in the ministry's push to have Virgin Islands history and culture becoming a staple in the local school curriculum at the 3 levels: primary, secondary, and tertiary. He says a literary arts officer, a performing arts officer, a cultural heritage officer, a visual arts officer, and of course a cultural education officer will be employed. Wheatley also noted the Department of Culture had put together a cultural education committee which has curriculum officers from the Ministry of Education. He noted the committee is having an ongoing dialogue on how and when to insert books on Virgin Islands history in the school curriculum, and he's currently waiting on its recommendation before his ministry takes the next step. The Virgin Islands government has taken several steps over the last few years to develop BVI culture and history in the territory. Last year, the government implemented the BVI Culture and Tourism Month, which is celebrated every November. The month is focused heavily on highlighting Virgin Islands culture and is spreading awareness across the territory. The month includes activities such as a performing arts showcase, a literary arts festival, several workshops on BVI culture and history, and it includes and concludes with the Anegada Lobster Festival. Barbados' first president, Sandra Mason, has called on Barbadians to use the Republican status of their country to carve out a better future. Before Barbados' transition from a constitutional monarchy to republic status early this morning, President Mason was Governor General, who represented the Queen of England as head of state.
In the Republic of Barbados, we must see ourselves as thought leaders and change agents, actively engaged in the difficult business of nation building, a nation that is characterized by courtesy, harmony, unity, opportunity, equality, economic well-being, empowerment, and respect for each other's differences.
Meanwhile, Barbados' Prime Minister Mia Motley last night used the opportunity to announce that globally acclaimed singer Rihanna is now a national hero.
My government has the distinct honor of recommending to the President, who has kindly and graciously accepted, that Ambassador Robin Rihanna Fenty tomorrow morning shall have conferred upon her the Order of National Hero of Barbados.
Rihanna's mother is Guyanese and she is the niece of local cultural icon Alan Fenty. And now for the world news from the BBC.
BBC News with Sue Montgomery. The US congressional investigation into the deadly assault on the Capitol building in January says President Donald Trump's former chief of staff, Mark Meadows, has agreed to appear before it to make a deposition. From Washington, Anthony Zerker.
Congressman Benny Thompson, chair of the January 6th investigation, said in a press release that Mark Meadows has produced records and will soon appear for a deposition. As Donald Trump's chief of staff, Mr. Meadows could provide information about the former president's activities before and during the U.S. Capitol attack. The Meadows decision comes after the indictment of former Trump advisor Steve Bannon on 2 counts of contempt of Congress for his lack of cooperation with the investigation. Meadows may now avoid a similar fate as the committee continues to increase pressure on witnesses who have yet to comply with its request.
The man expected to be Germany's next Chancellor, Olaf Scholz, has proposed that the country's parliament vote on whether to make vaccinations against coronavirus compulsory. Mr. Scholz has backed mandatory vaccinations as a way of defeating a 4th wave of infections. Here's Danny Eberhard.
Making COVID vaccinations compulsory is a vexed and divisive issue, but one that, increasingly, European Union nations seem to be turning to. Now Germany's Chancellor-designate Olaf Scholz backs them. It's a big political call, but Germany has been seeing record infections and its health system is under serious strain. Mr. Scholz says current vaccination rates at just over 2/3 of the population are not high enough. German leaders are expected to announce new restrictions, including tighter ones aimed at unvaccinated people, on Thursday.
The former Prime Minister of Lesotho, Thomas Thabane, has been charged in the High Court over the murder of his estranged wife, Dipolelo. He's accused of hiring hitmen to kill her in 2017, days before he was sworn into office. The Nobel Peace Laureate Nadia Murad has thanked Germany after a court in Frankfurt issued the world's first conviction for the genocide perpetrated on the Yazidi religious minority. She's a Yazidi survivor herself. The court sentenced an Iraqi man who was a member of IS to life in prison. Damien McGuinness reports.
It was in 2015 in IS-occupied Iraq that Taha al-Jumaili enslaved a Yazidi woman and her 5-year-old daughter. He mistreated them for months, including one day chaining the little girl up outside in the blazing sun. She died of thirst. It's the latest in a number of recent cases in Germany to use the principle of universal jurisdiction. That allows people who commit war crimes to be prosecuted, even if they were committed elsewhere.
World News from the BBC. A pupil has opened fire at his high school in the US state of Michigan, killing 3 of his fellow students. The authorities in Oxford Township said 6 other people were wounded in the attack, including a teacher. A police official said officers arrested a 15-year-old suspect at Oxford High School and seized a semi-automatic handgun. Burkina Faso has given details of a major regional security operation launched with Ghana, Ivory Coast and Togo last week to stem the jihadist insurgencies in parts of West Africa. The defence minister said almost 6,000 troops were deployed. The Turkish currency, the lira, has hit a new historic low following a series of interest rate cuts endorsed by President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, despite widespread criticism and soaring inflation. It fell over 4% to 13.43 to the dollar on Tuesday evening. The lira has lost nearly 45% against the dollar this year. The celebrated French-American singer, Second World War resistance member and civil rights activist Josephine Baker has been inducted into the Pantheon in Paris. She's the first black woman to be accorded one of the nation's highest honours. Lucy Williamson reports.
Josephine Baker was the star of Paris again today. Her journey to the Pantheon accompanied by recordings of her voice, as France honoured a woman who used her celebrity to campaign against racism and pass messages for the French resistance during the Second World War. As her symbolic coffin was laid in the mausoleum, President Emmanuel Macron spoke about her life. Baker's symbolic coffin contains handfuls of earth from the 4 corners of her life: Paris, Missouri, Monaco where she's buried, and the village in France where she raised her children.
BBC News.
And that's the news to the moment.
After a hard day's work, delicious comfort food is all we crave for. There at KFC, they've got you covered with a wide choice of delicious, finger-licking good meals from any of their 9 locations, including the Amazonia Mall at Providence. And there are 6 drive-through locations for your convenience. Their 11 herbs and spices are sure to blow those post-work vibes away every time. It's the perfect way to end a hard day. KFC.
It's finger-licking good.
Now to end the news, a recap of the highlights. GECOM appears set to appoint a former Deputy Chief Elections Officer as the new Chief Elections Officer. A newly formed civil society organization is opposed to hefty penalties against officials of the Guyana Elections Commission. An Indian-born Antiguan fears there is a plan to kidnap him and bring him to Guyana. Regionally, a lobby is on in St. Lucia for Cuban COVID vaccines to be used to fight the potentially deadly virus. Barbados' first president of the republic is urging her country folk to make republicanism worthwhile. Internationally, a top aide to former U.S. President Donald Trump is expected to testify about the Capitol Hill attack. That's the end of the news. It came to you with the compliments of Kentucky Fried Chicken.
This has been the news, compiled in the News Talk Radio newsroom. For ongoing updates, visit demerarawaves.com, and you can check facebook.com/demwaves and twitter.com/demwaves.